I never imagined that two ordinary words could feel like the sharpest blade. But when my wife, Sarah, turned to me one night and softly whispered, "I'm sleepy," it cut deeper than anything I had ever felt. It wasn't just about that night. It was about the months before it, the endless nights of me waiting, hoping, begging for a closeness that never came. Every time she would look away, every time she had an excuse, and every time I felt a little piece of myself slipping away. That night, I had walked into our bedroom after a long day, carrying the weight of both exhaustion and hope. I reached for her hand, searching for the warmth that once lived there. But her hand stayed limp, her eyes heavy with indifference. Normally, I would have begged. I would have leaned closer, tried to kiss her, whispered something playful to melt her heart. That's who I had become. Someone constantly pleading just to feel wanted. But something inside me snapped. I swallowed the lump in my throat, steadied my shaking voice, and for the first time in months, I didn't beg. I simply whispered one word that would change everything. Goodbye. When Sarah and I first got married, life felt like a dream. We weren't rich, we didn't live in a fancy house, and most nights dinner was just instant noodles or scrambled eggs. But none of that mattered, because we had each other. I still remember the nights we stayed up until sunrise, talking about our future. She would curl up beside me on the couch, her head resting on my chest, tracing circles on my arm, while I promised her that no matter what life threw at us, I would always love her. And she'd look at me with those bright eyes, the kind that made me feel like I was the only man in the world. Back then, intimacy wasn't something we had to think about. It just happened. A brush of her hand in the kitchen would turn into a kiss. A simple smile across the table could ignite a fire between us. We laughed, we touched, we loved like two souls who had finally found their home. But somewhere along the line, something changed. The laughter grew quieter. The touches grew fewer. And the smiles, they weren't for me anymore. Sarah always seemed busy. Busy with her phone, busy with work, busy with anything but me. The woman who once craved my presence now avoided it. Nights that used to be filled with passion turned into silence, with her back turned to me, her excuses ready. I'm tired. I have an early morning. Not tonight. At first, I told myself it was just a phase. Every couple goes through ups and downs, right? I kept convincing myself she was stressed, overworked, maybe even unwell. But deep down, I felt the truth clawing at me. It wasn't just exhaustion. It was distance. And that distance was growing wider with every passing night.
That night, I walked into our bedroom with a strange mix of hope and fear. The lights were dim, the room quiet except for the hum of the ceiling fan. I paused at the doorway, watching Sarah scroll on her phone, her face lit up by the screen but not by me. I sat beside her, gently reaching for her hand. My voice was soft, almost pleading. "Sarah, it's been so long. Don't you miss us?" She didn't even look up. Her thumb kept moving across the screen, her eyes fixed on something else, someone else, maybe. Then, with a small sigh, she finally set the phone down, turned to me, and whispered those words that had become my prison. "I'm sleepy." 2 words. Simple. Ordinary. But to me they felt like a wall being slammed shut, a lock turned on the door of the life we once shared. Normally, I would have tried again. Kissed her forehead, begged her to turn toward me, convinced myself that tomorrow would be different. But something inside me had finally broken. I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized I wasn't her priority anymore. Maybe I hadn't been for a long time. My throat tightened, my chest burned, but my voice came out calm, almost steady. "Goodbye," I whispered. It wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. But it was final. That single word carried the weight of months of rejection, years of love, and the sudden clarity that I couldn't keep living like this. And as I stood up and walked away, Sarah didn't even ask where I was going.
The night I whispered goodbye, I slept on the couch. Or at least I tried to, but sleep never came. The cushions felt rough, the silence too loud. Every creak of the house reminded me of the distance that had grown between us. When morning arrived, Sarah moved around as if nothing had happened. She brewed her coffee, checked her emails, and left for work without a single word about my absence in our bed. That silence hurt more than any argument could have. By the second day, the loneliness became unbearable. I wandered through the house like a ghost, every corner echoing with memories I wished I could forget. The kitchen still smelled faintly of the cinnamon rolls she used to bake on Sundays. The living room held the laughter of nights spent watching movies together. But now, all of it felt like a cruel reminder of what we had lost. And beneath the loneliness, suspicion began to crawl in. What if she wasn't just tired? What if those endless excuses were covering something darker? I tried to push the thoughts away, but they kept clawing back. The way she smiled at her phone, the sudden late nights at work, the vague explanations about projects I had never heard of. I started checking the clock whenever she left. My chest tightened when she didn't answer texts quickly. Every laugh that wasn't shared with me became evidence in a trial I never wanted to hold. By the third night, paranoia consumed me. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, imagining her in someone else's arms, offering the warmth she had denied me for months. And in my gut, I knew something was terribly, terribly wrong.
On the third day, I couldn't take it anymore. My chest felt like it was being crushed by a weight I couldn't name. The silence at home, her indifference, the endless loop of "I'm sleepy" replaying in my head, it all became unbearable. So I drove to her office. I told myself it was harmless. I just needed to see her, maybe surprise her with lunch, maybe remind her that I still cared. But deep down, my hands were trembling on the steering wheel, because I knew I wasn't just going there to say hello. I was going there to find answers. When I walked through the glass doors of her building, my heart pounded like a drum in my ears. And there she was, Sarah, standing near the reception desk, laughing. But she wasn't alone. A man stood beside her, tall, well-dressed, confident. His name tag read Mark, though I didn't need a name to feel the jealousy burning inside me. At first, I tried to rationalize. Maybe he was just a colleague, maybe they were working on something together. But then I saw it. The way she looked at him. The softness in her eyes, the glow in her smile, the tiny way her arm brushed against his, like she couldn't resist being closer. It was a look I hadn't seen in months. A look that used to be mine. I stepped forward, my voice unsteady. "Sarah? Who's that?" She turned, startled, like I had caught her in a secret she thought would never see the light. For a moment, her eyes betrayed her. There was hesitation,
panic, something she tried to hide with a forced smile. "Oh, this is Mark. He's helping me with a project." Her words sounded professional, but nothing about the way they stood together was professional. His hand lingered near hers, their laughter too easy, too familiar. And in that instant, my heart sank. All the excuses, the late nights, the tired smiles, it all made sense now. I didn't yell. I didn't make a scene. My throat closed up. My chest hollowed out. And I turned around before the tears could spill. The drive home was a blur, my hands gripping the wheels so tightly they turned white. Every mile between us was filled with memories, her head on my chest, her laughter echoing through the house, her promises whispered in the dark. And all of it now felt like a cruel, unforgivable lie. The moment I left Sarah's office, the world outside felt blurred, like I was moving through water. The sunlight seemed too bright, the sounds of traffic too harsh, and yet inside me, everything was dark. On the drive home, memories began to flood my mind, uninvited. I remember the nights when Sarah and I used to stay awake just to talk, our whispers carrying promises of forever. I remember the mornings she would kiss me goodbye before work, even if she was running late. I remember the way she used to reach for my hand in a crowded room, as if to say, "You're mine and I'm yours." But those memories now felt like a cruel trick, mocking me with what we had lost. I thought about the little things too. The way she had started turning her phone screen away when I walked into the room. The sudden, unexplained late nights. The distant tone in her voice whenever I asked how her day had been. I had noticed all of it, but I refused to admit what it meant. I clung to hope, even when it was killing me. Now, seeing her with Mark, I realized the truth wasn't just about another man. It was about the years of small rejections that had chipped away at me. The quiet nights where she turned her back to me. The subtle dismissals that told me, without words, that I didn't matter anymore. Her betrayal wasn't just in that office, laughing with someone else. Her betrayal was in every "not tonight," every "I'm tired," every time she chose silence over my embrace. And as the memories washed over me, I finally understood something I had been too afraid to face. It wasn't that she stopped loving me in one moment. It was that she had been leaving me, slowly, painfully, for a long, long time.
That night, I sat on the edge of our bed, staring at the suitcase lying open in front of me. My hands trembled as I folded shirts, tucked away shoes, and zipped compartments. Every sound, the rustle of fabric, the click of the zipper, echoed like thunder in the silence of our home. Sarah walked in, her expression tight with confusion. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice sharp, almost defensive. I didn't look up. "I can't do this anymore," I said quietly. Her eyes widened. She rushed toward me, her voice suddenly frantic. "Wait, David, please, don't go. It's not what you think. I made a mistake." Her words cracked, her tears real, but they came too late. I stood, finally meeting her gaze. For a brief second I saw the woman I had once loved, the one who used to laugh at my silly jokes, the one who swore she'd never let me go. But the weight of months, years even, pressed down on me. "You didn't just make a mistake, Sarah," I whispered, my throat burning. "You made choices. Every night you turned away. Every time you said I wasn't enough.
This is a pattern, and I can't live like this anymore." Her tears fell, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't reach out to wipe them away. I closed the suitcase, lifted it off the bed, and walked toward the door. My legs felt heavy, my heart shattered, but my steps were steady. And for once, I didn't look back. The first few weeks after I left Sarah were the hardest days of my life. The silence of my small apartment was deafening. I would wake up in the middle of the night, reaching out to the empty space beside me, only to feel cold sheets. The memories haunted me, her laughter, her touch, the home we had built together. There were mornings I sat at the kitchen table, staring at a cup of untouched coffee, wondering if I had made the right choice. There were nights when loneliness pressed against my chest so hard I could barely breathe. But slowly, something started to shift. I began to rediscover myself. I picked up books I had always wanted to read but never had time for. I went on long walks, letting the fresh air clear the weight in my head. I joined a local gym not because I wanted to change how I looked, but because I needed to remind myself that my body and my life still belonged to me. One afternoon, as I sat in the park watching kids play, I realized something profound. I had been living in Sarah's shadow for too long. My happiness had been tied to her approval, her affection, her presence, and when she withdrew all of that, I crumbled. But now, for the first time, I was learning to stand on my own. Yes, I was still healing. Yes, the pain was real. But there was also freedom in the air I breathed, a sense of control I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't just the man who got cheated on. I was David, a man who had survived heartbreak, betrayal, and loneliness, and was still standing. And as I watched the sun set that evening, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, I promised myself one thing. I would never again beg for love. The next time someone came into my life, it would be because they chose me, fully, wholeheartedly, without conditions. For now, I had myself. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Months passed, and though the pain never fully disappeared, it began to change. It was no longer a sharp wound tearing me apart. It became more like a scar, tender, but a reminder that I had survived. I heard from a mutual friend that Sarah had moved on. She was with someone new, starting another chapter of her life. And surprisingly, I didn't feel the rage I once thought I would. Instead, I felt a strange mix of sorrow and relief. Sorrow for the love that had died, but relief because I was no longer chained to someone who saw me as disposable. I realized then that betrayal is more than a moment. It's the accumulation of small dismissals, little rejections, and silent choices that slowly tell a person, "You're not enough." And yet, walking away had taught me something even more powerful. It taught me the value of self-respect. Love should never require begging. Intimacy should never be a transaction. And no person should ever feel like they have to shrink themselves just to be noticed. For a long time, I believed staying was the brave thing to do. But I know now the bravest thing I ever did was leave. Because love can fade, promises can break, hearts can shatter. But dignity? That is something worth protecting at any cost. I no longer look back with anger. I look back with acceptance. Because even though Sarah's betrayal changed me, it also freed me. And maybe, just maybe, That was the real gift hidden in the pain.
If you've listened this far, maybe you've felt something similar. Maybe you've begged for love that was never returned, or stayed silent while your heart was breaking. Let me tell you this. You are not alone. You deserve to be loved without conditions. You deserve to be chosen every single day, not ignored or dismissed like you don't matter. Sometimes the bravest act of love isn't holding on. It's letting go. And if you're standing at that edge right now, wondering if you're strong enough to walk away, trust me, you are. Because losing someone who doesn't value you isn't really a loss. It's the beginning of finding yourself again. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And don't forget to subscribe, because I'll keep bringing you stories that remind you of one thing. Love can break you, but self-respect will always save you.